All right. We are live with safehome.org, and today we're talking about murder holes, man traps, and trebuchets. Today's topic, home security through the ages. I'm Rob Gabriel, home security expert with safehome.org, and we're here again with retired SWAT commander and now owner of Survival Response LLC, Gene Petrino. How you doing, Gene?
Doing fantastic, Rob. How are you doing?
Doing great. Excited for this one.
Yeah, me
and,
too.
and everybody, like always, we'll be doing live Q&A throughout. So if you have any questions, drop those questions in chat at any time. And with that, let's go ahead and jump right in. We have a fun slide presentation for you guys today. And I'll let Gene go ahead and jump into this.
Yeah, so we were talking earlier, and it's always interesting to me that security over the ages is really just things that we do today. We've done hundreds of years ago, and so that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. Like you said, from Drawbridges, doorbell cams, it really has seen the similarities between everything over the years. It's interesting. So let's get right into it.
Excellent. And in chat, looks like we already have a couple people coming in here. Hi, James. How you doing? And we have Maya as well. Glad to have you guys with us. MD as well. Hello, MD. All right. As people trickle in, Gene, feel free to carry on. And as questions come in, we'll just kind of field those as we go.
Sounds good. Okay. So, some of the stuff we're going to talk about today is why we secure our homes. And then we're going to kind of go through the ages of we'll start out with the ancient civilizations, medieval times, early modern period, and the Industrial Revolution, which is, I think, where some of the biggest changes have happened up until this century, the 20th century. So, let's dive right in.
Great.
So, when we think about like the beginning times of human instinct, really what we had to go by to save ourselves, we had to rely on that primitive brain, that center part of our brain that protected us and warned us of dangers. But as the threats evolved, we had to get a little bit smarter and started to use tools and devices to improve the security of our homes or where we were staying. So it really is, again, the beginning of our security that we have today really started centuries and centuries ago. One of the really good question is, why do you protect your home? If you guys want to put that in the chat, what's your primary reason? Is it to protect your properties, protect yourselves? How far do you go? What do you think is a good level of security? Is a door lock enough, or what's the general consensus out there is sort of what we're looking at for today. So drop that in there, and we'll get the conversation going.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I'd love to see what is on people's minds for this question. For me, it wasn't until I had my first child that I really cared about like locking the home down and securing the home. Before that, like if someone were to come in and take some belongings, it wouldn't be the best. But once you bring kids onto the scene, it's a whole different ballgame, and that kind of paternal instinct does kick in, and you're like, okay, we got to get going with this. So wonder if anyone has those types of stories, or of course, when if your home is broken into, a lot of people buy security systems right after that kind of event. So
yeah, for me, it started off where when I was younger, I was really protective of my property. I was worried about them stealing things. As I got older, I realized that things really weren't that important, that if they stole a car or they stole a TV or something like that, most of that stuff is so easily replaceable. And then it became more about the personal protection of people inside the home. So yeah, it's interesting how, like, as you get older, your perspective changes on that. So I'm curious if I'm the only one that's like that, or if there's anybody out there that thinks differently. So, which I'm sure there are.
Yeah, we'll see. All right.
So let's talk about ancient civilizations. We're talking like Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome, Egypt. This is where we sort of had like all the high walls and watchtowers around the cities to get an early view of foreign invaders and things like that. We're talking about having like huge doorways that are like huge wooden heavy doorways that protected areas. And Roman homes, they had inner courtyards and narrow entrances. It's interesting that when we talk about the inner courtyards and narrow entrances, we still do that today. When you're looking at a secure, especially like event security, the goal is to funnel everybody into a smaller area slowly. It's, creates the lines, but those lines also prevent a mass entrance to something where some people can sneak through. So there's a design. There's a reason that we wait in lines a lot of times, because you want to make sure that everyone coming through there, into an event or even into a home, that they're able to be seen and inspected and patted down or go through any kind of security measure to make sure they're not carrying weapons or don't have any nefarious intent when they're inside. So that's something that's been a long time coming. And then even when we talk about like high walls and watchtowers, that's, that relates a lot to those security cameras that we have these days.
That's right. Like the early surveillance system.
Yeah. Yeah. Even guard dogs. I mean, guard dogs have been used for centuries. A lot of them, like mastiffs and things like that. I always consider those like the first motion sensors, because you can't. They picked up on things that humans can't. They could pick up on the smell, and so they would alert a lot sooner. Now we have technology that does that. But again, dogs are an excellent security source for us to use today.
That's right. Yes. Still a great addition to your home security setup.
Definitely.
We actually have, a couple comments have come in here, and James says, before the first time I had to leave on a work trip with my wife home alone, I bought a security camera system and a video doorbell. And so he says definitely about protecting the family.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely resonates. And then MD says, we had a couple of car break-ins in our neighborhood, and that made me want to get a Ring doorbell and a security camera. So definitely want to shore up your protection there. And then Maya, she says, agree, keeping self and partner safe, especially as two women living together. I feel especially safe because a lot of neighbors are often out on the street chatting and hanging out, also locking doors. So yeah, especially if you're living in like a more urban environment, you don't know who's walking up and down the street any hour at night.
And it's so funny. She mentions probably one of the easiest things that everyone can do, but a lot of people don't, is just locking those doors. I mean, that's such a simple thing to do, but a lot of people think, well, I'm home, I'll hear it. Well, that's great. You'll hear somebody come in, but if they've got a gun, or if they're going to choose a violent, attack, it's better to have them having to force their way in, so you can at least escape, defend yourself if necessary, or even barricade yourself in and call for help. So that simple act of just, 2 seconds of locking a door is a great thing. And again, another, benefit I think to having a lot of these smart locks is that you can put timers on these locks, so that if the door's left unlocked a certain amount of time, then after, let's say, a minute or 5 minutes, it self locks. So just another thing that, if you forget to lock your door's going to lock for itself. So just something else that's a kind of a benefit to technology these days.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there are even the smart locks nowadays that have the geo access. So as you leave the house, and if you're a quarter mile away, it automatically locks, or 100 feet away, automatically locks.
Yeah.
Same thing with garage door. They have those garage door sensors that closes the garage. So yeah, technology is a huge added benefit.
Definitely. All right, so now we're heading up to the medieval security, so 500 to 1500 AD, and we're starting to talk about castles and keeps. So moats, which are like, if you think of a moat, it's really your first original security for a perimeter, right? We have fences and walls and all these things now, but they use moats. I mean, they just use big areas of water around their castles. And a lot of times they would fill them with things that were not so friendly, crocodiles, things like that. So anyone that went in there is probably not going to have a good time. So we're just building on these very primitive ideas of security early on. So I always find that fascinating. We talk about guards and sentries, patrol on the grounds. We still have that. We still use guards. Again, we talked about how dogs have been used for a lot of those things. We still use dogs. They're still such an incredible tool to have, either as a pet or if you're actually using a security dog. So really good to have those. A lot of the villages and homes had basic latches and locks and things like that. And we talk about communal protection. A lot of times they had their own versions of neighborhood watches and things like that, where they would be able to get information out of a problem, and they would come together as a community to defend the community. So we have that again. We have neighborhood watches and things like that. And then, of course, one of my favorite is the murder holes, which is a really neat thing. They would put them, in the ceilings. or in the walls, so that when an invader or people would come into a small area like a courtyard or a narrow hallway, there was nowhere for them to escape, and they would be able to do things like shoot arrows, throw stones, dump hot oil on them, anything they could to defend themselves. So it was very hard to, as an attacker, to get through those types of defenses. And it's a neat concept. And we still, if you look at a lot of jewelry stores, some government buildings, we still use the concept in a form of a man trap, where you're blocking an area. They can get to one door, but they can't get to the next door. And it works really well. We actually had a funny story once, where there's a man trap for the jail cells from the carport, where you would go and put the prisoner, and then you take them into the man trap. That door would lock. Then you'd go to the next door, where you take them into the cell to process. Well, the door was broken one time. The garage was left open, and someone came in coming in to ask for information from the police department, and they actually got locked in to the man trap. And our securities picked up this person in there, and it was funny, but not funny. It was great that we could see that. But they're very effective tools, and they're still used today. It's a lot of time. You can see a lot of videos of people trying to rob a jewelry store, where they'll go in and they'll get trapped between the man trap when they're trying to steal the jewelry. And those are typically, bullet resistant glass, and they're stuck in there until police get there. So really neat ideas that have kind of evolved over the centuries.
Yeah, I love the name man trap. It's funny.
I know. It's always a good one.
And bonus points to anyone in chat who can name the movie from the image on the bottom left here.
Oh, come on. Everyone's got to know.
Anyone?
I didn't even catch that. It was a good one, Rob. So, and then we're talking about sort of getting into that modern time, where we're talking about gates and locks that are around cities, and watchmen's and bells. And again, we're just building upon the old strategies of communal protection. There we go. We got Monty Python popping in.
Yeah. Nice, James.
Good job, James. But yeah, so we're talking about that community protection, and where everyone's sort of helping each other survive. And this is sort of where the early lock and keys start to come into play. Safes and strong boxes. You start storing your valuables a little bit easier, or a little more stringently, I should say, to protect people if they get in, that they have an extra barrier that they've got to get through. And again, when we talk about security, we're talking about layered protection. So if they get through the gates, then they've got to go through these narrow passageways, and they have to go through, any of these other areas step by step, and it just makes it harder for them to do it. And eventually, either they're going to get caught or they're going to leave. So that's the whole idea of these protective measures. And again, it's things that we've done over the ages, and we're still pulling through today. We're talking about walled estates for wealthy landowners and things like that. And honestly, if we talk about castles and keeps, the keeps were the original safe rooms that we have today. And we're talking about walled estates. That's where these started to come in, to where you had these protective rooms that had additional security that a family could fall back on and sustain themselves while help came. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so look at these keys. So imagine how easy that lock must have been to pick to, breach security.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. And do thinking about today and keys and front entryways, do you know if a lot of burglars and thieves are taking time to pick locks? I know that was a thing for a while, maybe a few decades ago, but
yeah. So I mean, we're getting back into the difference between people that are opportunistic or those that are professionals. And when you're talking about the professionals, yes, they're going to be using things like lock picks and stuff like that. Whereas most of the home break-ins, most of burglaries, even for businesses, are opportunistic. They're looking for something, and so it's usually just kicking in a door, smashing a window, things like that. So it's not so much going into that, but the ones that are using lock picks techniques or tools definitely are the higher end ones that are a little more skilled and a little harder to catch a lot of times.
Right.
Then we get into the Industrial Revolution. And this is now, of course, you have this big population explosion. So when you get more people congested in an area, resources become a little more strained. So you start having a little bit more higher crime. And then we start talking about the first home burglary alarm systems, which are electromagnetic, back in 1853. I found that fascinating. I didn't know that it was that, that old of a system. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. It's such a basic thing that even we like the sensors that are on windows and doors are very simple. They're magnetic based, 90% of them, and it's a really good process that still over all these years have still stood the test of time.
Yep.
And again, watch clocks used to track the guards rounds, things like that. Again, we're just building on that whole system of having guards, whether armed or not, sentinels and things like that to keep an eye on certain areas. And then we start talking about gas lamps and electric lights, which really is starting to get into the value of having light for visibility. And again, I'll always say it that lighting is probably one of the best, if not the best, crime prevention methods that there is.
Yeah, I actually found the watch clocks especially interesting. So there's a picture here on the right of one of those, and I guess they would mount these on like the walls or posts around like a predetermined path that the guard would walk around the village or the town, and then they would put their key in there, turn the key in each of these, and it would somehow stamp or like imprint their name on the inside, so that like their boss knows that they're not sleeping on the job, but they're actually making their rounds.
Yeah,
I thought that was actually pretty smart.
Yeah, and it really was starting to hold the security guards and and law enforcement a little more accountable for doing their jobs. And it also helped with some time, identifying the time that a crime occurred, because you say, well, the last time someone was here was this time, so it didn't happen all night. It happened an hour or 20 minutes ago because we just had a guard pass through there. So yeah, another very effective security measure.
Yeah. And Maya in the chat says, yes, always keep our front door lights on.
100%.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's real smart. All right.
All right. Now we're getting into the 20th century. So this is where we're at pretty much now. Wired alarm systems really became the norm. You started seeing a lot of companies that had been around a while starting to offer residential services and things like that. Private security firms started doing, like I said, home security, like ADT and Brinks and all them. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't realize how long those companies have been around, but really a very long time. And then we start talking about, camera systems in the 1940s and started going a lot into the homes. I was surprised to see the 70s and 80s, but probably not as much as you see today. Today, you go any go to any electronics store. Heck, you can go to Costco and buy a whole security system and have your house all wired up, so to speak, with cameras and alarms. So it's really become the norm to have security systems. And if you don't have one, you really should have one. But again, we talked about this, motion sensing lights, garage door openers, and security signage. Really has become the staple of a good security system these days.
Yeah. I was also a little bit surprised by the CCTV systems introduced in the 40s and spreading to homes in the 70s and 80s. I remember a little bit of the 80s, just a little bit, and then into the 90s. And it seemed like very few, if any, of the homes in my neighborhoods had any kind of surveillance set up. But yeah, maybe it was just my neighborhoods that I live.
No, I think it really had I think they were really popular in the 70s and 80s and commercial applications. You would see them a lot in banks and things like that.
That's
I
right,
didn't see that. I didn't see that much either in the residential area. It's not to say that they weren't. They're probably a lot higher end homes that were starting to get them. But definitely this is, you started learning about what those systems were back in the 70s and 80s. You started becoming aware of them. So, and again, they've just leaps and bounds have improved from back then. It's amazing how well they've gone.
Oh yeah. Look at this big honking thing up here on the top left picture.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's basically like a VHS like system with a lens on it.
Oh yeah. It's crazy.
Huge.
And it's probably black and white and all very pixelated and not,
yeah, totally grainy. You're not catching
now
anybody
you can
with
have
that
a
thing.
nearly pitch black and have color night vision now, which is
that's
crazy.
Right. And they're packed into these little tiny things.
Yeah.
I mean, real small cameras,
which is good because you can hide them or not hide them, and it's and again, a smaller target if the person is trying to disable them, used to be able to just throw something, hit that, being that big and not that hard to hit, but something smaller is going to, of course, be a little more difficult to disable.
That's right.
So,
Yeah. That's we should at some point do a whole episode on hidden cameras and
Oh
like
boy.
when it's okay to hide those, when it's not, the legalities
Yeah.
around that,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
how to detect hidden cameras when you're out at like Airbnbs and like
Yeah.
hotel
That'd be
rooms.
great. Definitely.
I think a lot of people care about that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. Let us know in the comments if you guys want to see something like that.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, though, I think. And here we are today with digital revolution. And again, it's amazing how fast technology, since I was growing up to today, the integration of systems is really great using, like you were talking about the geofencing where you can leave your house and it picks up on where you are and it locks the doors or closes up, or it can even turn lights on for you when you're getting home. And I mean, it's so neat, the amount of technology and the way that it can really enhance our security. So the rise of smart home integration, smartphones, AI and sensors. Again, all the remote monitoring is really good. Smart locks, we talked about those. Video doorbells. I mean, you can't it's hard not to see a video of a doorbell of an incident that either the doorbell helped them or prevent something, or at least provided evidence of someone doing something they shouldn't have been doing. So those are invaluable. It's just such an easy thing, and the cost is so low to get those. Then we talk about facial recognition, package detection, real-time police alerts. These are really starting to come into to fruition, and it's really nice to see some of this technology. A little scary at the same time, facial recognition and all that, but we're in that point of life where having this technology, not using it to our advantage would be a waste. So, and again, like I said, DIY home security kits, you can go anywhere and buy a simple, even just the most rudimentary system is better than nothing. And again, buy a sign, put a sign up. That's the easiest thing that you could have, right?
That's right. Yeah, we have. I mean, there's Ring alarm out there. There's Simply Safe. There's Abode. There's a number of brands like DIY home security brands that you can pick up on the cheap. And by on the cheap, I mean like 150, $200.
Yeah.
For a basic system, you're not getting all the frills with it, but it will protect the perimeter. You'll have like the electromagnetic sensors, so when a door is opened, it'll sound the alarm, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's real easy to get into nowadays. So there's almost no excuse for people not securing their homes.
Yeah.
And I find it really interesting that like juxtaposing the digital revolution home security with the medieval times, there's almost not anything that we're doing today that wasn't done back then, but it, like you said, it just looks differently, right? Now we're using it. So like instead of watchtowers, we have cameras. Instead of those like the weird like wooden locks, which I feel like you could just kick those in.
Yeah.
Probably did back then.
Yeah.
We have the smart locks, and it's just looks different, but it's the same more or less.
Yeah. I mean, security it doesn't have to be complicated if you just look at it and simply saying, all right, well, how do I create redundant systems? So I have a fence that's closed. Okay, that's the first layer. Then you go to the think of like that dartboard, right? The center of the bullseye of the dartboard would be your home, and then the security should work itself out. So you have a fence. Then you might have like what we call hostile landscaping, like thorny bushes under the windows so that people can't crawl. They don't want to get by the windows; they're going to get hurt. And you're funneling everyone to the points of entrance, which would be the doors, usually a front door and a back door, which you'll have lighting, you'll have security cameras, you'll have an alarm system. So all these things added are really the same stuff that we've had, for ages. But we're now just using technology to enhance that. And it's incredibly inexpensive compared to even 5 or 10 years ago. The cost has come down on everything. And it's really becoming the norm to have just the most basic system with, door alarms and a video doorbell and a camera. You can get those really cheap, and they really do amazing at deterring criminals from coming to your house.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the technology does run the spectrum. So we were talking about like the Rings and the Simply Safe, the DIYs. Then here we have facial recognition. So you'll get that in like systems like Vivint, the more advanced systems. So when someone comes up to the door, the video doorbell or camera, will scan their face, and if they're logged in your system as a familiar face, then they're okay. You don't get notified. The alarm doesn't go off, any of that stuff. Um, how do you feel about that kind of like technology? Some people are going all out and spending a lot of money on that. I personally don't think that's necessary, but maybe at some point it is. Maybe in certain neighborhoods. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I think it's an individual choice based on what their need is and what they can afford to have. I don't think it's necessary to have everything with facial recognition.
Mhm.
Those are great add-ons if you can afford them. I don't think it's something that's absolute necessary. I think honestly having a sign, having just your doors at the very least alarmed, having a video camera like a doorbell, and probably the points of main entry, so doorways, essentially having some kind of a door security camera
Mhm.
there would be beneficial. And then of course lighting. It's a lot of stuff really doesn't have to be that complex. But and especially the fact that it's all can be done remotely. You can monitor yourself from your cell phone. And it's such a great system, and they don't cost a lot of money. Yes, it's neat. Yes, there's drone technology where if there's a perimeter activation, the drones will fly up, and that's really cool and that's neat stuff. But most people, that's just not a necessity, unless you're
Mhm.
a high end, a celebrity, or you have the money, or you're a target because you're a corporate CEO that's worth billions, and you're worried about kidnappings and all that kind of stuff. You really
Yeah.
don't need a lot of that system. But they're neat, and I suspect as we go on the next few years, the cost of all of these is going to drop even further, and we'll get even more enhanced security technology coming out.
Yeah, that seems to be how it goes. They're really expensive at first. Home security systems used to be thousands of dollars,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So now they're down to a couple $100.
Yep.
So I would actually be interested to hear in chat what you guys think about facial recognition. Would you feel comfortable, setting your entryway up with facial recognition and, um, you know, logging the faces of your friends in your phone? Do you think they would feel comfortable with it? Would love to hear a little bit about that. Yeah, MD says I'm a little leery of facial recognition technology, so I'm glad you discussed this topic. Yeah, I think a lot of people are. Um, it's very new. It's definitely an imposition, or it's imposing on people's privacy for sure.
Yeah.
And we're not always sure what companies are doing with this data that they're collecting on us, especially when it comes to like biometric type data.
Yeah, and I think that's the scary thing, is that technology is great, but it's also it can be used against us as well, and we got to be careful of that. And I kind of agree. I'm not a huge fan of facial recognition. There's ways to defeat it, to disguise yourself, or things like that. So I don't think it's always the best thing right now. But as time goes on, unfortunately it's going to become the norm. It's going to be part of our
Yeah,
daily life, and we'll all get acclimated to it. Um, but we just have to be guarded against that and understand that there are pros and cons to all this data that's out there on us, especially like I said, like all the biometric data that's out there. It's a little scary, but it is the way we're going, and unfortunately, I don't think there's no stopping it.
yeah. Yeah, Maya says, I'd feel better about a good old fashioned code. I'm right there with you, Maya. MD says, I wouldn't feel comfortable using it, especially with family and friends. Maya says, same. So, yeah, I mean, different strokes for different folks. Like you said, Gene, there's a lot of like early adopters that are tech heads,
Yeah.
gearheads, and
Hmm.
they want the latest and greatest. And, despite any kind of like privacy concerns, they'll get it. So,
Well, think about how when AI, over the last couple years got popular with like ChatGPT, and I don't want to use that now. Everyone's using
sure.
everyone's using those things because they're now more comfortable with it, even though the chance of that being used against us in some fashion is still there. Like I said, we kind of get acclimated to it, and our guard gets let down. We see the benefit of it. But
Yeah.
for those of us in the security industry, we're always looking at, well, how does that used against us as well? And I think that the right attitude is to keep that balance of when it can help us and when it can't, and is it necessary or is it not necessary? So something for everyone to think about.
Right. Great points.
Yep.
Speaking of drones.
Yep. Yeah. So we were talking about, the drone technology that's out there. Very interesting, very neat how it can do these things, and they're autonomous. If there's some kind of a perimeter breach, they can go up and identify a threat early on. Then you got voice controlled panic systems, which are really good. Augmented reality. That's interesting. To test your vulnerabilities. A lot of times we'll use drones when we do security tests on businesses or even homes. And we'll fly above, and it's amazing what you can see from the air that you can't see from the ground. And understanding that if we can see it from the air, that means that criminals are also using drones, and they can see that as well. So a lot of times, I think we talked about a couple episodes ago. We were talking about how the higher end burglars were using drone technology to fly over homes to find out the layout and things like that, if there's a fence, if there's a pool, if there's dogs in the backyard, things like that. So it's great to have it. Again, it can be used in a good way or a bad way. So just understanding that technology is a benefit, but it also can be a headache for you on the same level.
Right. Yeah, and here these images, the top one here is the Ring Always Home cam. So this was the concept of this drone flying camera that would be set up on a predetermined path around your house. So it would kind of float from room to room, upstairs into the additional bedrooms, mostly to kind of monitor your home when you're out, obviously, but like out of town or on vacation, on a business trip, that sort of thing. Which is kind of nice in a way, because you wouldn't have to have multiple cameras around the house. It would just be this one camera that kind of is always on, always home.
Yeah.
I don't know if this actually ever released. I think it might still be in production now. And then Astro, the Amazon Astro robot, is the one beneath it, which is, I believe, available soon by invitation only. So it's like maybe a couple $1,000s, but it kind of roams around the house, does the same thing. I believe it has like an Alexa display on it as well. So you can actually see that there. So you can do all the things you would with Alexa, maybe play music and that kind of thing, but it also keeps you safe.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
It's neat. I get a little nervous again of having those cameras, on their own, patrolling good and bad. Where's the feed going? Who else has access to it? So, they're really neat things. But again, you have to weigh the benefit with are you leaving a vulnerability open to yourself as well, as far as like a hacker getting access to your camera. And then they have a bird's eye view of every part of your house. They can see the valuables you have, things like that. So it's good and bad, but I definitely like the idea. These concepts are always really good. It's just, how do you make them so they're more beneficial than not?
Yeah. Great points, and all good concerns. Chat, curious, are you guys pro robots or anti robots in the home? Love to hear it. All right. Yeah, and that's basically the presentation, you guys. So thank you. And again, any questions that you have, drop them in the chat. And don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps to support the channel. We can create more content like this for you. So yeah, hope to see you guys again next time. And thanks again, Gene. This was an awesome discussion. Anything else you wanted to add before we signed off here?
No, I think we covered everything. I think it's, again, I just always found it interesting to find out about how we really haven't changed, other than the technology aspects. The application and the concept of security stayed consistent throughout the centuries. So it's just, we're building on our experiences and technology, and I think it's a great thing. It's a great conversation. I'm glad you came up with the idea, Rob. It was definitely a good one. Appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. All right. Thanks, Gene, and we'll see everybody next time.
Take care.